Man, we are finally back. Hal and Kevin Harrison here. We are back on the Do Hard Things Today podcast. Yeah, man, it's been a while since we have gotten anything out. Just a lot of stuff going on in our lives, a lot of things happening, but we've committed to getting back to you guys. We appreciate you, all of you that have reached out to us wanting some more content. So we're promising we're going to get that to you. We've actually got a schedule down now where we can get these things hammered out and get them out to you. So just a short apology there that we've been missing, but we are back now, and we've got some exciting things to be bringing to you over the next several weeks. Man, middle of November. Gosh, I don't know when the last one we put out was.
I think around April.
So a lot has happened since then. We're going to talk about, in this podcast, we're going to talk about what's been going on with us and some of the things that we've been doing physically with some of our races and that kind of thing. And then over the next couple of podcasts, we're going to talk about some, we got some good news on some races and we got some bad news on some races, but we're going to cover those things. But today's podcast, we're going to talk about really what, the race that, I guess the last one we left off, Hal had bitten off doing his first half Ironman, and that was going to be the Augusta 70.3. And then we're going to talk about myself and what I was doing. I was actually training for a end of the summer full Ironman, and I'm going to talk about what happened with that and what I ended up shifting gears into going into. So we're going to jump right in, and we're going to talk about Augusta. Now, for those of you that have done the Augusta half Ironman before, it's got some really good things about it, and it's got some things that can be challenging. Number one, what a lot of people like about it is a downriver swim, but on the flip side of it, it can be 100 degrees, and so you just never know what you're going to get. So, Hal, what went into why did you pick Augusta, and why did you determine that was going to be your first half Ironman?
Well, I think for me, it was just seeing some of the Hub City Runners community, including Kevin, doing the Augusta 70.3 in the past. Kevin and my wife Jill had done it, and Megan and several of them, Reggie, Prashant, just a lot of them had done it. And I had spectated twice, so I kind of knew the landscape down there on how to get around. So that was kind of attractive to me, plus being a kind of a new swimmer where I was then, and it holds true for a lot of the beginner swimmers that it's a good one to start with since it is the downstream swim. So just seeing you guys do them and knowing the landscape and proximity to where we are in the upstate of South Carolina was appealing.
Yeah, and this is a end of September race, and so again, you never know what you're going to get with weather. Now, this year you guys caught a break with the weather, right?
We lucked out on the weather. It was low 80s.
Yeah.
Not so bad humidity. So yeah, we lucked out on the weather in Augusta this year.
All right. So leading up to your race, what did your training look like when you got into your heaviest training weeks? What would an average week look like for you?
Typically 8 to 10 hours a week between balancing the swims, the biking, and the runs. I was putting in between 8 and 10 average hours a week between those three. So it was basically 3 swims, 3 bikes, 3 runs between those.
What was your biggest challenge coming into the race?
For me, it was definitely the swim. I had started back in 2020, when I was thinking about doing Augusta, I went and got 2 or 3 swim lessons just to see if it was possible for me to even learn how to swim. So that was January of 2020. Took a few swim lessons and said, yeah, I can do this. And about that time, after I pulled the trigger on registering for Augusta, then COVID hit. So that shut down the swimming, and then eventually shut down the September 2020 Augusta race. So had to defer to 2021, get my years straight. But that wasn't so bad a thing because it gave me an extra year to do the swim and get in better shape, which we'll talk about. Turned out to be a wonderful thing.
Yep.
So
So let's get into the swim. So and it is an easier swim than comparatively speaking to another, but it is still 1.2 miles, and that's what I tell people that are thinking about doing Augusta. And are like, well, I don't really need to train that much. You can't just not train to do 1.2 miles. In a river.
It's not an easy swim. It's just an easier swim.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, getting inside of a river and there's just a lot of some of the things that you, and I'm going to ask you about this, some of the things that you may not be used to or prepared for. I remember, and of course I'm a really tall guy and got really long arms, but I remember on that swim, as I would get a little bit closer into the bank and swimming, and I would reach, and my hands it would come up with all that, river, the stuff from
the ones that Scuba Steve missed.
Yeah, the ones that Scuba Steve missed. And those things it doesn't sound like much, but it's just, it just kind of throws you off a little bit. So,
had dinner with Scuba Steve.
Oh, did you? Yeah. For those
and
of
all
you
the group and Jeff Spires and.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Jeff Spires I guess he started the big Augusta group,
Facebook
group, and Scuba Steve goes in and cleans out the river the best he can to make it more swimmable.
Kind of a legends in the Augusta.
Yeah.
70.3.
So tell us about the swim. I guess number one, how did the swim go, and from your time standpoint, and then number two, what are some things that maybe you weren't prepared, that you just that maybe once you got out in the middle of the river, it was like, oh man, this is new.
Yeah. Well, leading up to the swim, I had actually went down in July of 2021 to do a practice swim with Jeff Spires and the group. They had a group to come down and do a practice swim in July. So I went down with them and was nervous, of course, on doing that swim first. But I actually got in the river, and I had practiced a good bit open water swims with a wetsuit. And we were wearing a wetsuit for the practice swim, and was more comfortable in the wetsuit. So had some open water experience. So when I got in the practice swim, I swam it in like 27 minutes, and I didn't stop the whole for the whole 1.2. I swam the whole distance all the way down the river. So that was a big confidence builder for me doing that practice swim.
How important do you think that? Well, I guess two different things. How important do you think it is for a race like an Augusta? And as we're going to talk about in the podcast, and that listeners will be hearing about 3 podcasts from now. Open water just brings. It's not like you go to the pool. And the pool. The only problem you ever have at a pool is if maybe it's a little bit colder than you want it to be. But open water brings different challenges. How important is it for people to really get some open water swimming in before this? Because I know surprisingly a lot of people, the first time they get in open water is when they're doing the triathlon.
And surprisingly, not only open water, wearing a wetsuit.
Yeah.
Because Augusta, I guess you could say historically hadn't been wetsuit legal. So there was a lot of people standing around me waiting in line to go to start the swim during the race that was the first time wearing a wetsuit.
Yeah,
I overheard.
And how let's talk about that for a second, because a lot of times people think, well, you just put on a wetsuit, then it's just going to be easier. But
That's a different animal too.
It's a different animal. It puts your bodies in a different position than probably.
It compresses you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's the big one. What you just said of it. It can cause you to become claustrophobic. It can just it can create anxiety.
Yeah.
And the worst thing you can have in the water is anxiety.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me, I guess, on the open water and for everybody is sighting, because there's no black lines like in a pool on the bottom of a river for you to stay on course. So, so that's one thing you need to learn how to do in open water is how to sight, how to swim around other swimmers that you don't do in a pool. People bumping into you, people swim over the top of you, some people swim under you. So you just have to be prepared for that. And if you can find, a clinic or Coach Katie, one of Coach Katie's open water swims that she does, where they actually practice bumping into people and people touching your feet and drafting. That's a whole nother animal too, is drafting during these races. So so there's it's a lot more going on with the open water swim than just swimming in the pool. Yeah.
So what was your time getting out of the water?
The race was 30 minutes and 13 seconds.
Yeah, 30 minutes and 13 seconds. Yeah,
officially.
Yeah, and that is that's smoking for a 1.2 mile swim. Now, obviously, you've got, but still, you had to be prepared to be able to have.
I mean, that's 30 minutes of swimming.
Yeah,
but keep in mind too, Augusta, a lot of the speed is dictated by the amount of water they're releasing from the dam up at the Strom.
How was that? How was it a strong current?
Actually, they had slowed it down from Friday night when we did the practice swim down to and Jeff Spires said that they would slow it down some. So it went from, I know these numbers won't mean much, they didn't to me, but it's just they slowed it from 8,100 CFS on Friday night down to 6,100 CFS for the race, and it takes about, they said it takes about 12 hours. So, all that's dictated by how much power supply they need and all that. So, now if they could have opened up the dam and released more water and it'd been faster, but it just depends on the luck of the draw, really, on what they're doing at the dam. I've heard slower releases, so it really is depending on what they're doing on race day.
And I don't know about you, but when I swam Augusta, obviously it was the fastest 1.2 mile swim I'd ever had, but I didn't feel a current. I felt like I was just swimming.
Right.
And the next thing I was like, I finished.
We're done.
Yeah, I finished.
You look up and
15 minutes faster than I thought I would.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing. And then
now on Friday night when I did the practice swim, I did stop just to see how much current it was, and you were moving pretty good.
Yeah.
Moving pretty good.
All right, so you hit transition, and then you're moving to, and for those of you who have followed the podcast, this is how strongest leg is going to be biking. So transition go well.
The first transition went well. Had a little boo-boo on the second one that we'll talk about.
Yep.
Just a minor thing, but it could have been worse. Transition one went well. Got on the bike. So I had a plan. I use triathlon training, triathlon training, and when I decided to do Ironman Florida, which we'll talk about in
let's keep it positive in this
one. Signed up with a great coach, Matt Summer, out of Burlington, North Carolina. Yeah. So actually, we've talked about before about having a coach or not coach. I'm firmly believe if you're going to do a full, you need a coach. So I signed up with a coach off of TriDot. Super guy. So we had a plan that included my future plans for doing Ironman Florida. So we were going to use Augusta kind of like a not training, but kind of a trial, I guess you could say. So we actually throttled my bike. So the plan was to throttle the bike some so I could do better on the run. So we kept the bike. I had a heart rate range that I was supposed to sustain, and I promised I would be disciplined to keep that heart rate down to where it was where we had talked about.
And that's really hard. That's harder than it sounds.
It was hard. And he Coach Matt, he said, now don't be, and he knew me just from just a few weeks of knowing me. He said, don't be chasing people down on the bike. Yeah. He said, I know it's tempting when you see somebody pass you to take off. And sure enough, Team Heart and Soul, Jay and Morgan that we interviewed on a podcast from Woodruff, they passed me.
Oh.
And it was so hard not to chase those guys down. But I kept my heart rate where I was supposed to, but they took off, and I said, I know I can pass those guys, but I kept it down. So I ended up averaging 19 on the bike, which probably could have done 20, 21 or better, I think. It is a hilly course. There's probably 6 climbs in Augusta. So I had to watch my heart rate, kept it throttled down, but it paid dividends on the run.
How'd your nutrition go on the bike? What were and
it was good.
And let's back up to transition. Start with your nutrition in T1 all the way through the bike.
Transition, I do Cliff Bars for solids, and then goo gels for the non-solid. So that's all I had was Cliff Bars and gels. So I have a timer. I eat every hour, and I have I burn 280 to 300 calories an hour. Yeah. So that's what I have to replace. So that's what my target was between Tailwind, drink mix, Cliff Bars, and the gels. I eat every hour. Of course, the hydration every 30 minutes or more, or shorter. But I ate at least every hour.
And so that was right. You were right on pace with that, though, all the way through the bike.
Yeah, I had the timer. I ate, and it coincided well with the rest area, the aid stations. Yeah. Which I didn't stop at, but I kind of slowed down through the aid stations just to, I grab a bottle of water, pour it in the thing, and mix it with my mix, and on the go as I went. And then it perfectly coincided when I was supposed to eat, so I slowed up at the aid stations, but I didn't stop. So, good plan on nutrition, and followed it well.
All right, so you're doing everything you're supposed to do, and you hit T2. You said you had a hiccup in T2.
T2 had a hiccup. So, one thing, I forgot to untie my shoes. So I had to untie my shoes, put those on. So, in that kind of a frustration, I had clipped the race belt. I had clipped together with my visor. I wore a visor. Wear a visor when I run, so I had clipped those together so I could just grab them up and take them. So in the haste of running out of T2, I unclipped the race belt and put it around my waist, ran through the timing gate, and said, oh, crap, where's my visor?
Oh.
So I had dropped my visor before I had walked through the gate, and I thought, well, I don't want to mess up the timing if I go across the gate, so I said, I'll just leave my visor. But the sun was shining, so I was thinking, too, I'm going to get burned, sunburn. I'm going to get fried on this run. So I left my visor, Hub City Runner's visor, by the way. So when I was running along Augusta, I was looking on the side of the road for a hat.
Oh, yeah.
Just a hat laying on the side of the road that maybe some bum had
well, I was
given up, or
I was going to ask, because things like that we take them for granted, but when you're really used to a particular thing, during your run or during your bike, it can really throw your mental game off.
Habit, yeah. So
did you experience that?
So I did get I did. And I ended up get sunburn, where the visor would have been on my forehead and top of the head. So, but I was wanting to represent wearing the Hub City Runner's visor across the finish line. But so that was if you call it a boo-boo, I guess that was a major thing I had. So
and I think we run it as recreational athletes that and especially when you're and you're going to talk about this with your Ironman logistics of just some of the challenges that you face with that. Sometimes we get in such a hurry to save a couple of seconds that we can make a dumb mistake.
Yeah. Like, I dropped my visor.
Yeah, something like that, and so it's just something to for those of you listening to be aware of in transition of, don't get in such a hurry to save a couple seconds that you can, hurt yourself, later.
Yeah.
So
just take your time. Take your time, but have some urgency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so forget about the visor for a second. How'd your run go?
Okay, so as I said, we kind of throttled the bike for the run.
Mm-hmm.
So the run plan.
And let's call timeout rather.
Okay.
When you so you're throttling back your bike, and I think that's one of the important things that a coach helps you with.
Mm-hmm.
Because a triathlon, if you're going out and you're doing a bike race, and just a bike race, or you're just doing a half marathon or whatever, basically you've got one discipline you're worried about. So you go out and you can lay the hammer down.
Mm-hmm.
Problem with the triathlon, and the thing that makes it, and why you see people, and a lot of times people say, "Man, my run was just terrible," and they think that it's because your run was terrible. But usually you drop back and you say, "No, it's because you laid the hammer down on the bike."
Yeah.
And you used up all your matches,
right.
And then you get to the run and you don't have any matches left.
Run out of.
So that's the reason behind your coach. Your of course you know that, but I'm just for our listeners, that it is the discipline, and it is. And I know you may be listening and thinking, well, it's not really that hard to let somebody pass you, but it really is when you've got.
Oh yeah. I saw those guys go by. I said, I want to chase them down.
Because at that point, you could have mashed the pedals and just blown by them.
Yeah, or just hung with them.
Yeah, you had that in your tank, but you got to be smart, thinking, okay, there's more. There's
got a plan.
Yeah, there's another one. So you hit the pavement, you come out of transition.
Yep.
And what happens?
So the plan was for me to negative split the run.
Explain what that means.
Negative split is you get faster, your pace gets faster as the race goes by.
Yep.
So you're finishing at a faster pace than you started at. So then I've forgotten the numbers, but the plan was for miles 1 through 4 to run at a certain pace. I forgot what they were. So miles 1 through 4 at a certain pace, and then miles 5 through 8 at a faster pace, and then 9 through 12. Was that right? Yeah. 10 through 12, whatever, 8, 9, the next 4.
Yeah.
We broke it up into 4s at even faster pace, and then the last mile was going to be all out, whatever I had.
Everything you got.
Everything I got. So that was, I negative splitted the run.
All right, so that's the plan. Did the plan go well?
Yeah, I negative split the run. Felt great. I did do run walk. I think I ended up doing a 6-1. No, I think the first 4 I did a 4-1 just to get my legs going, and then to help in the faster pace, I went to a 6-1 run walk. So
the thing I like about negative split, and did this happen for you? You would probably in that first 4 miles, maybe some people passed you, and then if you're negative splitting, usually what happens is once you get past that halfway mark, they start coming back to you, and you're passing people, and it feels like and it builds the momentum for you because you're passing people. And I know, sometimes in your head you can have little mantras, and it's like, no, this is where I'm stronger, and you start Did that happen for you? Yeah,
it did. There was one guy I was running with. We'd trade back and forth. He'd pass me, and then I'd pass him, and then about mile 8, we were coming up on an aid station, and he patted me on the back. He said, "Enjoyed it." He said, "Go for it." So I took off, and
that makes you feel good, and that is. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. So you're coming towards the end. How'd your nutrition go? How did everything?
Good. Go? I do gels when I run. I can't really do solids when I run. So I would do gels. I would mix them in my water bottle. I carried a water bottle with me, for 2 reasons. One was for gels, actually I didn't mix gels in because I was using the water bottle to cool my head off. So I didn't want to put gooey gel on my head. So actually, I did do the gels without mixing in Augusta, and then use the water for hydration and cooling,
keeping you cool.
Yeah.
Keeping you cool.
So gels, I'd use gels on the run, so it worked out good. The aid stations, I didn't take any type of nutrition from the aid stations, just water.
Yeah, and
So.
the good thing about the run there is a flat run. It's a hilly
flat
bike,
run.
but flat run. Basically,
Yep.
you're running through Augusta, kind of
Mhm.
zigzagging back and forth
Mm-hmm.
there. So what'd you end up with your time? What were the times that you finished with, and how'd that compare to your goals?
Hold on 1 second. One memory is on the run finish was Tony Clement that we've had on the podcast before, one of the friends from Hub City Runners. So in Augusta, you come around a short block and then you make a right turn and you come up towards the finish line in the chute. And when I turn that corner, I don't know how far is that, maybe quarter mile,
about a quarter mile. Yeah,
See, I heard her yelling on that quarter mile. She yelled at me the whole time. Come
Really?
on, Hal Morris. They were tracking me on the time, and they knew we're not competitive at all. They knew my time was beating somebody else's time.
Yep.
And so they told me that during the run, so that kind of egged me on too. They said, "Yeah, you're going to beat so-and-so." I'm not going to call any names on their time. Now, you can't compare because when they did it, it was 90-something degrees, and I got lucky, but so I'll never forget Tony though, hollering, yelling at me, "Come on, Hal Morris, pick it up." Yeah. So that was awesome. So, bike I did in 257.
257.
I think I averaged 18.9 officially. I think it was 19 on my Garmin. Run was 224.
224
with a negative split.
That's awesome.
Overall, I did a 605.
605.
So,
what was your goal going in? I know you had a goal.
Between 6 and 6.5.
6 to 6.5.
Yeah.
So you beat that. So.
Yeah, I was right there, right between 6 and I was closer to 6.
So let's. I think you had which is really hard for people that, especially doing your first one, it's really hard to execute your game plan.
Yeah.
And not to you're out there especially for you on the bike. I got to believe it was hard to stay disciplined and not trying to hammer it when you've got that lift, but
especially on that last 8 or 10 miles when it flattens out.
Yeah.
I was wanting to go, and I went a little bit. I cheated a little bit on my heart rate, but
well, kudos to you for keeping your game plan.
Yeah.
What would you say to those that are training for their first half Ironman?
I be consistent as you can be. For any of these endurance sports, you've got to create time for your training. So to be consistent. So getting up at 4:15 for a 5 o'clock swim, 2 or 3 days a week, is tough, but that's the time you gotta create your time. I would plan my week out on Sunday nights, my week coming up on my trainings, when I was going to do what. So that would be the best advice, is be consistent and plan your training.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that is hard, and when you talk about executing a game plan, with the swim and even stepping back below the half Ironman for the sprint distance and Olympic distance, you can make the mistake of not really training your swim, and it was like, I'm just going to survive the swim. I remember we had somebody that did the Clemson Tri for the first time as a sprint. I think is it 500 or 750 meters? I can't remember.
I think it's 750 out in the lake.
And I remember him saying to me, he was like, man, and he was a really strong biker. I remember saying, like, man, I got on the bike, I just could not get any kind of power going. And just because, you're flailing around in the water because you hadn't been training.
You used a lot of energy.
Yeah. And so I think, when you're jumping up, especially to the half Ironman level, it's just crucial that you do, like you said, you plan out your weeks and you just stay consistent.
Be consistent.
Get the workouts in.
And it's not hard. The workouts aren't hard. It's just being consistent. And yeah.
Well, good deal. So from the half Ironman, what was next for Hal Morris?
So the plan was to do the full. Well, the original plan was to do a full in 2022.
Yep.
So when 1st of August, our son Clay played football. He got hurt and couldn't play football this fall. So a little bug put in my ear how that opens up some time for you to train this fall. So why don't you just go ahead and get the full Ironman knocked out?
Yeah.
So had several friends going to Florida to do the full. So that's when the light bulb came on about mid-August to do the full Ironman in Florida on November the 6th.
November the 6th. Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That concludes part 1 of this podcast. We will call it. And how is great success at Augusta. Right at 6 hours right for that first half Ironman, and so kudos to you on that, and then made the decision to jump into the full Ironman, and Ironman Florida is the one. So
stay tuned.
Part 2 of this podcast. The next one will be the journey and the experience of Ironman Florida. So for Hal Morris, who smashed his first half Ironman, this is Kevin Harrison, just reminding you, if you will do the hard things today, tomorrow will take care of itself.